What's up, man? How are you? Good morning.
Dude, I cannot believe where Palantir ended up, dude. It's wild, wild.
It's kind of crazy, right? I mean, it's just all of us just it's wild.
I mean, there's this is like one of those lessons that you learn in investing where don't fixate yourself too much on valuation. But then again, I'm old enough to the point where valuations actually mean something to me. And the thing is, like, I would end up losing sleep overnight. And I told myself a long time ago, like, if I buy a stock and I'm losing sleep over it, I just don't want to hold it. So for me, the valuation got too rich. It's just doesn't. I'm happy that all of you guys are making money. I'm just the one thing I'm really glad of it. I closed out any of my short position. I don't have a single short position or nothing on Palantir.
Hey, you closed that at like $30. You got out really early from this.
Yeah. Well, I saw the writing on the wall at that point, which was there was an unusual amount of risk with the amount of retail interest in it. So it really comes down to like making sure that you're not like that guy from the GameStop thing, where you have a theory and you're too full of yourself to say, you know what, screw this. So like Melvin Capital, he knew that a short attack was coming, and he saw it being published out there. And what did he do? He ended up doubling down like an idiot. And that's not what you do, man. If the position is going against you and it's going against you hard, get out. Don't try to deal with the unlimited loss scenario. So
let me ask you this question. Obviously, even though you're not a shareholder anymore, you've been following the journey for the past 4 or 5 years. You've known about Palantir for a long time. You saw the numbers yesterday. The numbers were amazing, but I'm sure you're probably thinking, okay, how much richer can the valuation get? What is your thesis on why this stock continues to go higher on growth that is good, but it's not NVIDIA level growth yet?
Well, I mean, this is where you have to talk to guys like Dumb Money. What's his name? Chris
Camillo.
Yeah. He explains it. Sometimes what happens is there's so much enthusiasm behind a name that the valuations don't matter and the momentum just carries it forward. And then as it keeps rocketing higher and analysts keep raising their price targets, more and more and more people keep joining in on it. And so it creates like this snowball effect. And so what happens is when you have a positive earnings, it's another catalyst for, oh, look, this is headed in the right direction. So if Palantir right now is still headed in the right direction, then the valuation doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. It doesn't have to make a lot of sense as long as there's people that believe in it. And here's the thing, like the mission that Palantir is on is one of the most commendable missions that you could be part of. The one thing I love about the company, and I really do love about the company, is that they do put like America first.
Yeah.
They've always been very, very determined on that. And I love that. Me being a former veteran, they have a lot of respect for veterans. They've actually provided the tools necessary to take care of veterans on the field and off the field. So you got to respect like companies that are willing to kind of put that part of ethos.
Well, let me also ask you this. So Bank of America said they're raising the price target to 125, and their price target of 125 is based on 15 times EV to EBITDA on 2035's earnings. They're going out 10 years into the future to justify the price today. Is that normal? And why do you think they're doing something like that? I mean, I know you said valuation because it doesn't matter with momentum, but how do you think the street is justifying this?
I mean, I've seen this happen so many times, man, where you remember in 2021, everyone just kept raising price targets. And then they would work backwards, right? And they would try to justify the price target that way, where they would go like, oh yeah, you know what? Like, do you remember like how many companies, man? I'm trying to think of all the companies in 2021. Like I think Twilio was one of them. Like, what are some of the high flyers?
I mean, all the Kathy stocks, right? Like all of them.
Yeah. So what ends up happening is the stock keeps rocketing higher, people get in, and then people start to work backwards in their assumptions. And I mean, dude, if you think Palantir is going to be at, like, literally, that's crazy level of growth, but it's possible, So, I don't know. I'm personally like, look, there's probably better value plays out there with a lot less execution risk going forward. So I'd rather be in other things.
Give me some thoughts on Google after the bell. You are heavily concentrated into this one. Do you think we get a pump or a dump?
Dude, I think we get a pump. Like, there's a couple of main factors that I think are really going to help Google. Number one, December, like the fourth quarter tends to be one of their strongest months. So if you look at historically, like, and you go back, this month is usually one of the highest ones, whether it comes to Christmas and advertising, all that stuff. And then on top of it, you've got the election boost going on. So that's why Meta had a really good time. And then at the same time, they released a lot of products for Google AI. One thing that I think a lot of people may not necessarily know, but Google, because of they use a lot of their own hardware, they have much better operating margins when it comes to cloud. So one of the things that they can do is actually undercut some of the other cloud players. And the one that I saw that took a little bit of a hit was Azure. Right? Like Azure grew, but it wasn't like great growth.
Dude, they had the stock at its worst day since 2022.
Yeah, and I think Google is actually picking up that growth. So I think Google right now is going to do really well. I mean, do you know what Kubernetes is?
Yes, I've heard of that before.
Yeah. So one of the main things about Google is that Google invented Kubernetes, and like from what I'm seeing, container services are becoming really, really big. And then Google at the same time is just a freaking beast of a company, man. When it comes to YouTube, it comes to advertising, subscriptions. I mean, I don't know anyone right now that doesn't have like YouTube, either YouTube TV or YouTube Premium or Google Music or whatever. And so all of that revenue is just going to keep coming in. And search is, no matter how many people are saying like Google search is dying, that's not what the numbers are saying. People are still searching on Google for a lot of things. But I think someone, it was actually pretty funny. Someone put on Twitter, like they were searching for porn on ChatGPT and it said no violation of content. But like, there's never going to be anything that replaces Google because any of these LLMs can't generate porn links. I mean, just imagine how much porn links Google probably makes money off of,
I mean, that's a lot of traffic. I mean, the Hub is in the top 7 websites on the planet. Right, ranked, so.
Yeah, but the thing is, people go to Google first. You go to a porno and you just type it in on Pornhub. They have terrible search.
Well, if AI starts replicating those videos,
oh man, everyone goes to Google first. Just like let me get like a Latina gangbang.
I am protecting you from the couch tonight. Okay, I'm protecting you from the couch tonight. Okay, cool. So we got a bull case right there on Google. How do you think the stock falls off?
Search Latina gangbangs on ChatGPT. Good luck. Then Google's got a problem, but I think until then we're pretty safe. Sorry, go ahead.
I tried. Just know to his wife listening, I tried.
Man, she ain't gonna watch no 4-hour stream. That's fine.
Okay. What was I gonna say? What could get Google to tank? Like, give me the bear case on this thing down 10% after hours today.
The same thing that I said, but in the opposite. Any slowdown in Google Cloud growth, that could definitely tank them because that's one of their new drivers for growth, right? So you kind of want to have a growing portfolio of businesses. That could be one thing. But like I said, it's hard for me to see that being a problem. But that could be one of them.
So you really don't think this is going to pull a Meta where the numbers are just so good the market can't deny it?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't see a lot of downside to Google. I mean, the only maybe search numbers, if search numbers come in like flat or weak year over year, that could probably do it too. But I don't think it's a scenario that we have to really worry about right now. Not to mention, like they're even becoming more and more efficient too. Like they're laying off a bunch of middle managers. I don't know if you saw that.
I did hear that report yesterday. Yeah, Meta's doing the same. Yeah.
So it's kind of being, I don't know. These companies are just doing well. They're also buying back a ton of shares. So yeah, Google, in my opinion, is probably going to do really well. But then again, 4 o'clock's going to come and we'll see what happens.
Okay, so let me ask you about the pseudo trade war we've had for the past 48 hours, which ended up being a nothing burger. Do you think Trump legit just scared everyone to negotiate? And do you think over the next 4 years we're gonna have to deal with more of this?
Oh yeah, dude, volatility is Trump's bread and butter, man. He says it himself. Like, he likes to keep his opponents guessing, so that this way they're always off tilt. They don't know what's going to happen. Like, do you know today Denmark said, well, maybe it's okay if the U.S. builds more military bases on Greenland. Like, who would have thought that could have even happened? But I mean, dude, did you was that even a remote idea in your brain when you were voting for Trump? Like, oh yeah, we're gonna take over Greenland.
No,
and we're gonna go after the Panama Canal. We're gonna fucking we're gonna put tariffs on Canada, like our longest standing ally. Like, seriously, I never even considered that, but this is how he is. I mean, so he's probably like calling the Chinese, and he's like, listen, if I can treat my friends in a shitty way like this, you're fucking nothing. So don't fuck around, you know?
I mean, that is true, dude. If you can treat your friends like this, and he was willing to go with the tariffs, it seems like. I mean, he probably knew Trudeau would capitulate and Mexico would capitulate, but it seems like he was ready to go. And that probably did scare them to an extent, and they gave up.
I mean, the Chinese are the one. I think the real conversation that needs to be had is who is ultimately the real target. And I think it's actually the Chinese. The Chinese are the ones that the U.S. is going to counter. Everything that I've seen so far from the Trump administration is built on countering China. First you look at the Panama Canal, right? Obviously, that was China encroaching in the Americas. So number one, that was that. Greenland. The whole thing with Greenland is that you want connection through the Arctic. And the thing is that waterway is actually really important. So you want to have logistically like a firewalled like defensive posture. So Greenland is very important geostrategically. Then you've got Canada. Canada was starting to get really close to the Chinese a little bit. I don't know if you've seen something called the Cullen Commission. Look that up. Like the Chinese were actually like getting a little bit involved in like internal affairs in Canada, you know, and Chinese have been buying up a lot of Canada. So that's a big problem. And then the same thing with Mexico, where all this fentanyl and everything else, it was all coming from China, getting smuggled to the cartels. And then the Mexicans the cartels would end up smuggling it into the U.S. So, you know, the Chinese are ultimately our adversaries in all of this, long-term, short-term, whatever you want to call it, the IP theft that goes on in there. So the Trump administration's main role right now is how do we geopolitically align ourselves to counter China, you know? So I don't necessarily agree with all the methods that he's using, because he's very like publicly shames his allies, and that's probably not what you want long term, you know? Like, but then again, our allies are also But then again, it's also like instability. Like the way that did you ever watch The Fresh Prince?
Yeah, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I love that show. Yeah.
You remember that one episode where I guess Will was trying to teach Ashley. It was like, listen, if you just act crazy, no one will mess with you. Right?
Yes. So he's like, mind your business. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of like that with Trump, where Trump is just like, I'll just act crazy, and no one will mess with me if I act crazy. Because people will just be like, oh no, I can't mess around with this dude. He's fucking crazy. You know? I mean, this is the type of dude that'll call North Korea and says, I have a red button on my desk. Say some wrong shit and I'll press it. Like, who fucking does that?
What is your take on the Sovereign Wealth Fund?
I think it's a good idea. I wish that it was done maybe 20 years ago when it could have made a really meaningful difference. So imagine right now the U.S. government can borrow money cheaply. They can take excess cash coming in from other sources, like let's say like taxes on oil and natural gas sales, like the Middle East does, put that money into like the S&P 500, and now you've got yourself a little piggy bank that you can go into and use some of the money for like infrastructure projects, you know? Like, these are the kinds of things that, had we done that like 20, 30 years ago, it would have been big.
Are you concerned about where we get the money from? Do we print the money? Like, how do we fund this thing? Have you thought about that, or just the idea is good enough to you to get started?
I mean, I think you have to start somewhere, right? one of the things that Scott Bessent and Howard Lutnick mentioned is that they've already got plans how they're going to do it. They could take some of the, let's say, the Bitcoin money from Silk Road, take that, put it in there, put it in the Bitcoin, take that Bitcoin that's been confiscated by the U.S. government, drop that shit in the sovereign wealth fund. Put some taxes on oil and natural gas sales around the country. Put those in there. Fuck it. I even said if they wanted to do like a partial tax deduction, not a full, but a partial tax deduction, I'll throw $100K in there. Do voluntary contributions. Do you know how many billionaires and millionaires we have that would be willing to actually put money towards something like that?
Yeah, dude, that's
benefit the country.
It's a hell of an idea because a lot of people that are billionaires have made their money because of the freedoms in the United States. And I imagine, like Warren Buffett, you're telling me he wouldn't throw a couple billion in there just to say thank you, before it's all said and done? I agree, it's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, dude, do you know the story of the Statue of Liberty? The French sent us the Statue of Liberty,
correct.
There wasn't any money to construct it. So, I think they just sent that out in the paper that there's no money people were sending like spare change, dollars, whatever, and they got the Statue of Liberty built.
Wow.
Right?
I didn't know that.
So the thing is, like, people around the country, dude, there are some generous people in the United States. And there's a lot of wealthy people that are willing to give money, especially if it means the long-term salvation of the country, right? But they want to make sure that the money is actually being used in the right way. So I think if there was a sovereign wealth fund that had some controls on it, where politicians couldn't just go into it and rate it every other year, every time like the what is that thing called? The political situation changes, I would be so down for putting some money towards it. And I think a lot of people would. And it doesn't have to be like hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, bro, small people can put small amounts in there.
Dude, even if everyone could put in like a couple thousand, and that's a partial tax benefit, so that's the incentive, but that adds up across the country, right?
Yeah. And the thing is, like, if you think about the compounding effect, if you put it into the market, bro, if you get 7, 8, 9% returns per year for like freaking 20, 30 years, you'll outpace the debt.
Also, I mean, like, they don't have to be risky. They don't have to invest in the next Tesla that inevitably is going to fail. They could just invest in the S&P.
That's right.
Like,
the S&P 500, that's it.
And if the sovereign wealth fund fails, it means America failed because the stock market failed, and then the whole world failed. So, like, really, what's the risk there?
Yeah. Not to mention, we could buy companies around the world too, international companies. You know, I mean, look at Harvard. That's a perfect example of a freaking. It's not a sovereign wealth fund, but it's a foundation. Look at how much money Harvard has now, and that's coming from donations, but then also the returns on those donations. CalPERS is the same exact thing over in California. Look at their returns. New York City, we have the New York City. I forgot the pension fund that we have. It's done well over the last, however many years. So I think right now we have to have creative out of the box ideas if we're ever going to solve like our national debt and all the other stuff. And I think one of the ways that we can do it is by equitizing realizing some of the assets that we have, putting something together, and then just every year that'll be like a nice little, like, make America great again dividend, I guess.
It's a great point with Harvard. There's so many alumni that have such an emotional, nostalgic, Bill Ackman, one of them, right? That cares so deeply about their alma mater. And imagine that for the country.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, I'm telling you, there are a lot of people that would be willing to just give their money away and put it in that thing. I'm telling you, if they did it based on and the thing is, my only ask would be that it would be used to basically make the country better via something like infrastructure. So the goal should be infrastructure related only, not like pet projects like that other people want to just put up, like keep the roads like the best roads in the country, like in the world. You want to keep that up. You want to invest in airport infrastructure to make the airports better, things like that, where it's actually going to develop us economically.
Matt said right here, the U.S. government makes 12.5 to 18.75% of every barrel made in the Gulf of America without having to pay lifting costs, pure profit. Put that in the fund.
There you go.
There you
Natural
go.
gas is huge now, right? So put some taxes on that thing. Fill up the fund with that. You know, there's a whole bunch of buildings that the federal government's not using. Sell them. Put that fucker in the fund. Let's go. Build this fund up. I would love to see that thing turn into like $1 to $2 trillion by the end of Trump leaving.
I agree. I agree.
And I think it's definitely possible that these guys, if, like I said, there are a ton of people that are willing to put money in it. They just want to make sure that the money is going to get spent correctly.
Chris, did you see the news on Grab today? Why it's up 12%?
Yeah, I did. I don't know what the funny thing is, I don't think it can pass the regulatory muster to get the deal through. So I don't even know why they want to even attempt it.
So I just got the Morgan Stanley report. I'm going to go through it tonight, and I'll tell you guys about it on the market close. My guy just sent it to me. And Morgan Stanley thinks there's a decent shot it gets approved. They share your concerns that there's a chance it obviously doesn't. However, one of the guys I talked to this morning as well that's been deep into Grab, his argument is that Singapore and Indonesia run through political families that have connections. Yeah. And Anthony Tan, founder of Grab, he's one of the most connected guys inside of the country. So he's actually says there is a real chance where Grab and GoTo pay a little bit of a fee, maybe 20, 30 million bucks, and they get this thing approved. And because Grab did the same with Uber to an extent, right? So here's my question. If it does happen, do you think that's relatively bullish for them taking out one of their largest competitors?
Yeah, that means that now they don't have to spend nearly as much in incentives for to get customers. So their CAC would go down. Their customer acquisition costs would go down significantly, right? Yeah. They'll also could raise prices on certain things to make them more profitable. Yeah. The only thing I'd say is that there's probably some overlap that they'd have to deal with.
I agree. Yeah.
Cut out, but that's fine. My biggest bull case for Grab, believe it or not, is their financial division and their advertising revenue. That's probably going to be much higher margin than what they currently have. Whenever you see businesses like this, once they hit scale, it becomes easier and easier to grow. Because what happens is the first probably 10 years are the hardest. Now that they're like a household name in Southeast Asia, they can add value-added services. So if you look at their like finance division, their banking division, that's like growing like really
38%, really bro, year over year. It's insane.
You know, so when I see that, I'm like, oh, interesting. Okay, so you've got yourself like. So I think what it is a lot of people still look at it purely as like a ride-hailing business and delivery business, which is still a core component. But there's other parts of the business that are growing within the company that are going to make it pretty valuable, in my opinion, in the long run. So I'm pretty long on Grab. The one that I'm probably ultra long on right now is Nubank. Like, oh, dude, you gotta. The amount of money these guys are going to be generating in the next few years, especially with expansion into Mexico, is freaking nuts.
You gotta go?
Yeah, I gotta go.
All right, thank you, brother. We'll talk to you later. Appreciate you.
Later.
That was the wife calling him about these comments that he had on the show today. I'm not going to repeat his comments. Dude, Chris is a wild boy. You guys think I'm wild with some of the stuff I say? Chris is wild, bro. That's why I love Chris. He'll say whatever the hell he wants, but he's a wild guy. All right, so I think that's it for the stream, guys. I did get the equity report from Morgan Stanley. I mean, let's read a little bit of it, and then we'll end the stream, and then I'm going to be back in literally 2 hours at 2:30 to stream David Sachs, so you guys will see me very soon. I don't know why the market's kind of taking a little bit of a hit right here. I mean, it's not really a hit. We're just seeing, instead of Palantir being at 106, it's at 102. Instead of Robinhood being at 53.15, it's at 52.75. So probably just generic algos, 12 p.m. I don't think there's any headlines here that's causing any movement. Here's what Morgan Stanley said. As per Bloomberg, Grab is weighing up a takeover of GoTo Group at a valuation of more than $7 billion. One of the scenarios being discussed is an all-stock purchase. The merger talks have been on and off multiple times over the last 5 years, and the companies have not commented on today's news reports. Despite being the largest on-demand service in Southeast Asia, Indonesia has the weakest unit economics as a highly competitive intensity has led to elevated incentives. Their EBITDA margin is 0.9% compared to Grab's at 4.4%. We think consolidation of market share would lift margins in Indonesia for both players with lower incentives as well as cost synergies. Regulatory approval. A merger would increase the combined entity's market share in Indonesia's on-demand ride-hailing service by 85% on our estimate. Based on merger regulations in Indonesia, we think regulatory approval might not be a bottleneck. They think it's possible. However, GoTo has also a presence in Singapore, where in ODS, where approval may not be straightforward given the recent Grab Trans Cab deal fell through. Shareholder structure and management control. Given its larger scale, Grab could seek to have majority ownership and management control of the merged entity. However, this was potentially one reason why the deal didn't complete back in 2021. GoTo's shareholding structure includes multiple voting shares, and shareholder approval requirements would vary depending on the agenda. That means if this does happen, it's going to take a while. It's going to take a while for them to figure out exactly how they get the shareholder structure and voting rights agreed upon. Grab has $5.6 billion in cash. The news cited an all-stock purchase scenario. The Grab-Uber merger in 2018 was also all-stock, though given its strong cash position and a combination of cash and stock, that could also be possible. And then they go on to basically say why the multiples would probably make sense to have both of them merged together. Look, GoTo came out, I think, in a report today, and they denied the reports. The stock's not moving 12% up unless there is a 50% chance minimum of this thing happening. I would put the odds at 50-50 right now, minimum. You just don't move 54 million shares in volume when they barely do 20 million shares a day unless people think there's something to this rumor. Now, maybe it doesn't happen, and maybe everyone dumps it after they realize it's not happening. But if it really does have a shot, it would be massive for Grab to be able to capitalize on the space, and it would put them well in the lead to becoming a $100 billion company in Southeast Asia. So there you go. That's what we got on Grab. I couldn't read faster. I've been talking for 3 hours at this point. The speed has weighed out after talking for so long today. But here we go. Palantir 102.70. I think someone said in the comments, I now listen to a mid on 1.5 because I'm too conditioned at 1.0. So maybe I'll get everyone to speed me up even further into the future. 30 and a Wake Up says, my biggest bull case on Grab is the growing middle class in the regions. They dominate, very undervalued. I agree. The middle class wants more on-demand deliveries, financial services, ride hailing, and new products and services that Grab is going to offer. And as a result, that should be a country and region-wide tailwind for them going into the next decade.